sun is younger and brighter than Krypton's was. Your cells are drunk in its radiation, strengthening your muscles, your skin, your senses. Earth's gravity is weaker, yet its atmosphere is more nourishing. You've grown stronger here than I ever could have imagined. The only way to know how strong is to keep testing your limits.
Why is the movie called Man of Steel? Why not call it Superman the Beginning or Superman Origins? It's not just another nickname for Superman himself. It's because it's literally about a man discovering how strong he truly is, both physically and emotionally. Man of Steel. There has been many videos about this movie all over the internet. Some of my favorites are listed in the description below. However, I think there is one thing that still hasn't been addressed yet. The basic structure of the story and plot and the significant change that Clark goes through in the movie. Some make the argument that Clark doesn't change at all. Others would say that any growth he goes through ends with him discovering the scout ship, and anything after that is just filler. I would make the argument that Clark goes through many changes, not just one. He's still growing up, learning about the responsibilities that are bestowed on him by Jor-El. A good way to look at it is the movie is essentially divided into 3 acts, 3 journeys that he goes through. By the end, he is the Superman that both his 2 fathers and the world make him out to be. At the beginning, we see Clark as a drifter, working different jobs. And then, almost immediately, we see him use his powers to try to save people. Some have made the complaint that Clark has no moral foundation of why he saves people. He just does it. Others would make the argument that since when did Superman, or anyone for that matter, ever need a reason to perform a good deed? Is it wrong for him to just have a genuine desire to? Isn't that just who he is? Someone who represents the best in all of us? Others might also make the claim that the school bus rescue is what establishes it. They almost drown, and Clark looks back knowing that everyone might see him do it, but nonetheless, it's clear he knows he has to do something. Later, when he's talking to Jonathan, he reinforces it by saying,
"What was I supposed to do? Just let him die?"
While both arguments are definitely valid, here's another way to look at it. Every time he uses his powers, he gets closer and closer to finding out the reason he was sent here, who he is, and what he was meant for. When he rescues the oil drillers, he struggles with his strength because he still has not reached his full potential yet. Afterwards, he falls into the water and has a flashback of when his mother told him to swim.
The world's too big, Mom.
Then make it small. Focus on my voice. Pretend it's an island out in the ocean. Can you see it?
I see it.
Then swim towards it, honey.
When Clark saves the children on the school bus, it leads to Jonathan telling him how they found him and that he owes it to himself to find out why he's here on Earth. So, in a way, both Jonathan and Martha teach him to keep swimming, keep moving towards the reason why he's different. Whenever he saves or helps someone or uses his powers in any way, he keeps his anonymity by changing jobs and moving on. So with all this, you could say that using his powers, saving people, keeps him hoping. Eventually, his hope is rewarded when he finds the scout ship, meets Jor-El, and he tells him about his world, that he's the embodiment of free choice, chance, and aspiring to something greater than what society intended. Now that he knows everything, does this officially make him Superman? After his first flight, Zod shows up and gives him an ultimatum: to surrender or let Earth suffer. Clark is lost and doesn't know what to do. So he goes to church. He tells the priest that his gut instinct tells him Zod can't be trusted, but at the same time, neither can humanity. The priest tells him to take a leap of faith, and the trust part comes later. So he does. He takes a leap of faith and surrenders to humanity. During the scene in the desert with Lois, he thanks her for her faith and belief in him. This actually shows how his faith in humanity begins to be rewarded, because despite having every reason to reveal who he is, she chose not to, and instead put her faith in him as well. He meets Zod and learns of his true plans with Earth, that he intends to destroy humanity and turn Earth into Krypton. This is the first step for him deciding to fight for mankind, him sinking amongst all the skulls of all the people he couldn't save. After he and Lois escape, Zod threatens Martha, to which Clark starts to fight back, and the battle in Smallville begins. The military shows up and shoots at everyone involved, including Clark. Clark doesn't fight back though. Instead, he helps to defeat the other Kryptonians and even saves the lives of a couple military men. However, Clark has trouble fighting them because he still has not yet reached what he's fully capable of.
You are weak, son of hell. Unsure of yourself.
At the end, after the Kryptonians have left, Clark approaches the military and the colonel says,
"This man is not our enemy."
Which directly mirrors a flashback we saw earlier when a bully tries to get Clark to fight, but instead he holds back, and afterward is helped out by that other bully that he saved the life of. So now, you can say that he has learned that humanity can be trusted to do the right thing. He now knows what it means to believe in every person to be a force for good. Now that Clark has decided to fight for humanity, he works with them to help defeat the Kryptonians, destroy the World Engine, and send them back to the Phantom Zone. However, that is not to say that Clark isn't willing to share this world if they were. After all, at this point he still thinks that everyone can be saved and be a force for good.
You can save a cow. You can save all of them.
I don't think they're interested in sharing this world.
So Clark goes to the engine over the Indian Ocean and takes a beating. Eventually, he learns to overcome its gravity force and realizes what he is fully capable of. Zod approaches the aircraft with Lois and the Colonel, but luckily, Clark shows up just in time to destroy it. Zod says if he destroys the ship, he destroys Krypton. Now this is something that faced major controversy as well, saying it's not exactly the best of both worlds to destroy the last of his own people. What I think people are missing is, this is Clark finally choosing who he wants to be.
You just have to decide what kind of man you want to grow up to be, Clark, because whoever that man is, good character or bad, he's going to change the world.
He realizes that Krypton was always a doomed society and will most likely repeat it. They are not a diplomatic race in any way, nor will they ever be. So he destroys the ship and the rest of the Kryptonians are sucked back into the Phantom Zone. Except for Zod. Now it comes down to the main controversy of this movie. The fact that they fight in public areas and Clark being blamed for not taking the fight elsewhere. But it's not Clark who is doing it. Zod is the one who made sure they fought in public places. This whole fight is not just about Zod taking revenge on Clark and vowing to kill him. The main purpose of it is that he's trying to get Clark to kill him, since he clearly stated he has nothing else to live for.
And now, I have no people.
There's only one way this ends, Cal. Either you die, or I do.
But Clark still believes that everyone can be saved, and all it'll take is to simply defeat Zod by beating him down. So in a way, with all the destruction they both do, Clark is still pulling his punches. Eventually, Clark has to take his life. This obviously pains Clark, so much so that he screams in anger. This is really a defining moment for Clark, because he learns that not everyone can be saved, even from themselves. This is also the moment where he learns how to embody the best of both worlds. The best of Krypton would be hope, the fundamental belief in every person to be a force for good. Which is why he doesn't necessarily kill the other Kryptonians, but sends them back to the Phantom Zone, much like the sentence they received on Krypton. And what's the best of Earth? Sacrifice. A lesson that Jonathan Kent taught him. The lesson that being a hero isn't easy, and eventually he'll have to make tough choices. So both Jor-El and Jonathan are the embodiment of both these ideals, and they have formed him to be a strong young man who knows who he is, what he's capable of, who has formed a deep connection with humanity, and has a clear understanding of the ideals he wants to embody. He is a true hero, strong-willed, invincible, a man of steel.